Our final speaker is a Malaysian-made professional that carries with her 17 years of experience, particularly in the fields of private equity and venture capitalism. While leading the government agency MAGIC, she initiated programs that are critical to tech development, such as the National Technology and Innovation Sandbox, NTIS, and the Global Accelerator Program, GAP. Now, as the newly appointed CEO of Technology Park Malaysia, TPM, she carries on her shoulders the mandate to transform the company into a premier tech park that accelerates the commercialization of homegrown technologies. Here to speak to us about innovation being central to our wealth and well-being as a nation, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dzuleira Abu Bakar.
Thank you, Edmund. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today, especially after hearing from all three speakers. I think all three speakers, Kim, Vinesh, and of course the team from Farm Fresh sort of captured what our new collective narrative should be, right? Technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I think today's theme, very apt and very much something that we should all be pushing for as a nation. Again, to recap the theme, the invention of tomorrow, crafting our new collective narrative. I think literally put, this theme is a call for ingenuity, creativity, innovation to really be the bedrock of our nation. And really, there's no better way to shape and craft our new narrative other than technology, innovation, and really entrepreneurship. Like I said, it's the speakers before me succinctly and very inspiringly shared their journey, right? And we saw that technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship provides access, scale, and ultimately betterment of society. All right, and many know that MAGIC supported Teacher Eats. We'd love to see how we can support Fat Hopes as well. So yeah. And look, I'm sure many of you recall at the turn of this century when the world was actually confounded by a bug, right? Which almost brought it to a grinding halt. And I'm talking about Y2K. But shortly after that, a new normal emerged. Then the internet took off and then bubbled a million of new ideas and inventions. Then 10 years ago, cloud computing, Web 2.0, smartphones all came on board. Then 5 years on, we had e-commerce, mobile applications. All of these became mainstream. Then we had fintech and the sharing of gig economy. Of course, then AI, machine learning, data sciences, cloud computing, 3D, bitcoins are today terms that we hear and use every day, right? But then today, the world finds itself confounded with yet again another bug, right? This time it's a different kind of bug, right? It has put a heavy toll on the economy, lives, as well as livelihoods. Now, as we all know, that the pandemic really has ushered in a new era of vaccine research. Under normal circumstances, making a vaccine can take anywhere from 10 to 15 years. Now, this is because of the complexity of vaccine development. However, amidst a global pandemic, time is not something that we can afford. It's not a luxury, right? So researchers had to quickly mobilize to share the coronavirus data with other scientists. And then, the whole global collaboration of scientists, and then the whole development of the mRNA vaccines came to the fore. Life-saving, ultimately, right? Now, today, we are witnessing the biggest vaccination campaign the world has ever seen. More than 6.3 billion doses have been administered across 184 countries. This is according to the data collected by Bloomberg. Now, the latest rate was roughly about 30.3 million doses a day. Meanwhile, here at home in Malaysia, as of today, as of yesterday, really, I think 88% of Malaysian adult population is now fully vaccinated. Now, on its impact to enterprises, over 75% of the 200 business leaders that were surveyed by McKinsey agreed that more opportunities will arise through the pandemic, and that they would be investing more into areas of innovation to take organizations forward. So really, this panel or this whole theme around crafting a new collective narrative is apt as we raise our Malaysian flags, with pride, right? Talk about Malaysian-made products, Malaysian-made entrepreneurs, Malaysian technology coming to the fore. And this is really an opportunity for us to rally together as a progressive, collaborative, and inclusive environment to accelerate economic recovery. Next slide, please. So again, this was also captured in the 12th Malaysian Plan, where innovation was stated to be a very important thread in the fabric of our society, right? And this is important to raise our household income and accelerate economy. So if you look at this slide, some may even ask why we bother with the whole innovation to be our new narrative. Now, this question really begs a data-driven answer. So here, we see that the world's most wealthiest country, now this is based on the GDP per capita by the IMF, and those scoring high on the OECD Wellbeing Index are also amongst those who are most innovative. 5 countries, as you can see, Switzerland, Denmark, USA, Netherlands, and Sweden, appear in all 3 categories, i.e. wealth, well-being, and innovation. Whilst 4 countries, Singapore, Norway, Iceland, as well as Finland, appear in 2 of these categories. Now, it is no coincidence that the birth of a notion can really propel a nation for a better future. So as such, we need to be measured in inculturating a nation's innovative spirit and its thirst for innovation, right? Innovation, so I mean, just to quote the UN, innovation, creativity has become the true wealth of nations in the 21st century. The recently released GII, or the Global Innovation Index 2021, shows that Malaysia is ranked 3rd after China and Thailand as the most innovative country in the upper middle income group category. However, our ranking overall against 132 countries this year dropped to 36 from, I think, 33 last year. Now, across the 3 measures, Malaysia ranks between 30 to 40 in the GII in the past 3 years. Relative to GDP, Malaysia's performance is said to be expected for its level of development. But look, we should be doing better, right? Now, on the wealth index, we rank between 61 to 70 for GDP per capita. On the well-being index, while Malaysia is not included in the OECD survey, our government released an annual well-being index to which there was a slight improvement in 2019. We've not yet seen the 2020 fully published report. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. Sorry, this slide articulates my point that I made earlier. Next slide again. Now, today, the largest content company in the world does not generate much of its content, as you guys know. The world's largest transportation company does not own a single car. The world's largest accommodation provider does not design a single room, right? The likes of Facebook, Uber, Airbnb certainly have huge bank accounts. So just, if you look at the combined market value of 4 of these innovative companies, Microsoft, Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, which is actually it's a public news that everyone knows, which is about $7 trillion, right? 2 times of that of the GDP of ASEAN, right? Now, Malaysians too have taken their innovative ideas forward and made a huge impact. Now, I don't know if many of you know that the invention of a surgical mask over 100 years ago was by Dr. Wu Lian-Teh during the Manchurian plague, which actually brought about global impact, right? And 100 years on, it's globally available and affordable. Now, earlier this year, Cancer Research Malaysia also spearheaded the development of a gene bank with more than 1,000 breast cancer profiles from across Asia. Now, having analyzed these against the World Gene Pool samples, they discovered that Asians have significantly lower, which is anywhere between 45% to 65% lifetime risk of developing breast cancer compared to Caucasians, right? Which is at 65 to about 87%. Now, this means that genetic testing for cancer can now be more accurate and testing of genes can be made more affordable. In July, a Malaysian company called Biogenesis also became amongst one of the first startups in the world to successfully produce COVID-19 digital rapid test kits using their proprietary aptamer technology. It's super affordable and it allows users to track their results with a smartphone, right? And the whole COVID testing technology is growing rapidly. In fact, MIT researchers have just found that people who are asymptomatic may differ from healthy individuals in the way they cough, right? So these differences are not decipherable to human ears, but it turns out it can be picked up by artificial intelligence. So it's literally coughing into a mobile phone and to be picked up by AI to detect whether you have COVID-19 or not. Yeah. Now, in recent weeks, Malaysia also scored our first unicorn, Carson, right? We entered the world stage valued at US dollars 1.75 billion and raised 170 million US dollars in its recent round of IPO funding. Now, their solution has unlocked a brilliant way of buying cars, right? It's a new way of buying cars, making important information more accessible to layers of society. I guess it grows in line with what consumers need and want these days is transparency of data, accessibility, and really ease of product. Now, in September, we heard from Kamarul this morning, Aerodyne. He confirmed that we clinched the top spot of the world's #1 company for drone technologies. Now, the innovation from unmanned autonomous vehicle will change the face of agriculture, architecture, and disaster relief as we know it today. Maybe I should also take this opportunity to announce to everyone that we've actually created our very own dedicated drone development zone at Technology Park Malaysia. It's a 5-acre drone development zone where research and development activities as well as commercialization activities for drones will be centered. Yeah. Now, moving on from Aerodyne, there's also an 11-year-old Malaysian schoolgirl, Mariam Muzameh, found a use for common food waste, right? Seafood shells, which she turned into new sustainable livestock feed. She's already won 3 international awards in her breakthrough idea. Now, there's so many talented Malaysians doing amazing work. The Malaysian Design Center at Intel developed 5 really amazing technologies, which is set into motion. In some convenience we have now in terms of our computer, smartphone, including USB pen drive, microcontroller, IoT gateway, and many more. Now, as we can see, Malaysia is not short of bright talents, nor of success stories. So what's stopping us from making it the narrative that it's strongly anchored, right? Inovasi Malaysia Sambutan Sedunia. That's something that we're coining. And how can we drive innovation enculturation, taking it from seed to forest, right? Next slide, please. Now, let's jump back here to the GIR, the Global Innovation Index. Here, one of the key indices in the number of patents filed as intellectual property becomes a new currency. Asia now accounts for more than 50% of world's patent filing, right? With China leading the pack. And as we saw earlier, the spillover effects or the spillover benefits of technology and innovation capabilities are directly in line with economic growth opportunities. Now, no doubt that we are actually in a brink of new era of innovation, one that will definitely be far impactful than its predecessors. Now, if we see in Southeast Asia, 82% of patent filings originate from outside the region, which shows there is actually much room for improvement, including in Malaysia, where according to World Bank data, there were only 1,017 patent applications for Malaysia in 2019. We don't have the updated numbers for 2020, but in 2019, we only had 1,017 patents. It is not the lowest, but it is nowhere close to what we'd see probably like in China. Right? China has about 1.2 million patent applications. Of course, it's not an apple-to-apple comparison, but I think the numbers, it's staggering in terms of its difference, right? Now, in order to create more IP, or in other words, to strengthen our security of innovation supply, we first need to look at how and where these are being created, right? Next slide, please. Now, in terms of dollars invested into R&D as a percentage of GDP, or we call it GERD, South Korea leads the pack in Asia with 4.6%, then followed by Taiwan, Japan, China, as well as Singapore. Now, Malaysia's GERD stands at 1.1%. If many of you don't know yet, we stand at 1.1%, lower than the world's average of 1.7%. So evidently, we have a lot of catching up to do. Now, on the talent count, according to the government data from 2018, Malaysia has just 58 researchers per 10,000 labor force. Malaysia's researchers are mainly in the higher learning institutions, which makes up 79%. This is from the higher learning institutions and 16% from private sector. Now, this number is actually flipped for highly innovative nations such as South Korea, with 82% of researchers who come from the private sector. And correspondingly, the R&D expenditure by the private sector today makes up about 44% of total activity in the market. Now, I think it's very clear that we really need to up our game, right? Increase our pipeline at the start of the funnel. And it's really about providing the right environment to support the talent development, right? In order for these talents to be identified and to be flourished, right? So I think simply put, we need more talent to be identified. We need more fat hopes. We need more pitchers. We need more farm fish. Yeah. So, it's also been outlined in the 12th Malaysian Plan, RMK ke-12, where we've set several R&D related targets to be achieved by 2025. It's a 5-year target. So these targets include that we increase our GERD to GDP to 2.5%. Next slide, please. Yeah, 2.5%. To recap now from the current 1.1%. Secondly, to increase our R&D expenditure by private sector to 70% from where we are about now, which is about 43%, and to increase the number of researchers to 130 researchers per 10,000 labor force. Yeah. And more importantly, these targets, among others, are building blocks towards Malaysia attaining top 20 ranking in the Global Innovation Index in the same period. And you can see the government is very clear about strengthening our security of innovation supply as our nation's collective progress on wealth and well-being. Next slide, please. Now, often in Malaysia and particularly, R&D remains where they are, with the research institutions and the universities. Now, this is despite the brilliant talent that our country has. Because from the perspective of researchers and innovators, there's actually no clear pathway of bringing their innovation out to the market. So the route from the labs to the market is rather murky, right? So amongst the most cited challenges are inconsistent and complex funding mechanism, budgetary pressures, and cultural gap between industry and research due to mismatched expectations, right? And we need to push for innovation beyond the confines of the labs or even academia into the market where innovative technology matches specific and eventually profitable use case, solving real problem. I think the speakers before me also spoke about entrepreneurship being the solution to real problem, right? So technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation, simply put, is really what we need. But in order to do that, we need to start improving our R&D output, right? So technology starts from R&D, and how do we then increase and improve our R&D output? Now, the commercialization rate evidently in Malaysia has been low. Yeah, the Malaysian Science and Technology Information Center, MASTEC. So the data from MASTEC is that our commercialization rate is 10 to 20% at best. Yeah. Now, if we compare this against China, which is aiming for a commercialization rate of 34.7%, and this was their aim last year. Korea, 10 years ago, had been at 38.9%. And even then, they deemed it unsatisfactory. All right. In highly developed economies such as Japan and the USA, it's reported as high as 60%. Right. So I think there's no way to better say this. The data already says that we need to do a lot more. Yeah. And we need better synergy here. Commercialization activities by the corporate sector and various academic institutions can be centralized or even aggregated for multiplier effect. Now, in recognizing that pressing need, as you can tell, the data tells it all. Evidently, there's a lot to do. And in recognizing that issue, the government recently announced the setting up of a technology commercialization accelerator, which TPM is actually in charge at the moment, and it's slated to be up and running by 2022, right? So instead of creating another agency from scratch, TCA, or the Technology Commercialization Accelerator, conceptually is formed through the merger of two agencies, right? Technology Park Malaysia as well as Magic. So it will be converged, consolidated, and merged to provide the best to the ecosystem, right? So both entities will match technology providers and seekers and investors for greater market access. Next slide, please. Now, I think, so the TCA will be a one-stop center, just to sort of summarize, with the resources to accelerate the commercialization of innovative ideas and concepts to impact, right? Simply put, from the labs to the market. It'll be a one-stop center, stimulate commercialization of demand-driven, right? I think we go back to the point where most of our R&D don't meet the product or market needs. So here we are pushing for more demand-driven R&D, and we'll increase connection through mutually beneficial partnerships, develop pragmatic, viable innovation, and of course, provide incubation, right? So one of the first pit stops include 100 plus IPs, which have been filed just within the MOSTI agency. So that will be our focus. We'll be looking to commercialize those IPs, and TCA will be doing an IP audit, of course. And to see how we can actually bring these IPs to market. The sandbox, of course, the National Technology and Innovation Sandbox, an integral part of TCA, has given us a flavor of this, right? We've received in excess of 500 complete applications. Biogenesis is one of our applications through the sandbox, which we actually put through the sandbox. And 130 of them received support in terms of funding, regulatory facilitation, technical, as well as go-to-market expertise, right? So a lot of these projects were in medical and healthcare, agri, forestry, and as well as energy sectors. Now, this only confirms that many Malaysians are at the cusp or something really, really good. And with key enablers, including regulations, corporate investors, and technology companies, we can actually work together on a single mission, work really, really fast. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So as we speed up our commercialization rate, scalability is also key. We get into high gear when inventions provide clear value or ride back to the pandemic in that sense, right? And this is where some shifts need to happen collectively. The TCA will offer structured programs and, of course, test bed to support aspiring and experienced entrepreneurs to bring their IP to commercialization. Now, we're also aware that not everyone has the same level of business acumen. Some may be, sort of brilliant scientifically, but in the dark as to how to bring their invention to market, or just not business savvy in that sense, right? Or you're seeking a business partner. So this is where the one-stop center or one-stop agency will play a very big role. Now, you see, our domestic market is strong, but in order to achieve scale and derive returns, we really need to ride on shoulders of the giant. Yeah. So perhaps it's worth mentioning the journey of Proton here, which is through collaboration and investment from partner, has put our top of class range, which is right now at a very affordable price, and international collaborators, whether by way of funding or knowledge and skill transfer, which will help us go the distance and gain ground. Yeah. So we're looking to improve national GDP, create more jobs, attract foreign investment, ensuring Malaysia becomes high-tech, high-income nation, and in short, to improve our global innovation index ranking. And with that, the wealth and the well-being of Malaysians. Next slide, please. Now, there's a lot of problem solving to be done, but crazy ideas rock the world, and we say bring it on for the future that's worth living. We have a strong network branching across diverse industries, solid foundation rooted in tech and innovation to accelerate R&D through active intervention and participation of the academia. Yeah, so I cannot lie, the journey ahead, this collective narrative will not be easy. It's not an easy one, but we have to connect the dots. But we can count on our Malaysians' strongest assets, which is the community relationships, right? And through the pandemic, Kita Jaga Kita and the White Flag movement has allowed us to tide through one of our toughest seasons in modern times. And the same will enable us to realize the innovation agenda. Next slide, please. And I think it's my final slide. So again, just to recap in terms of our collective narrative for us, therefore has been and continuously to be one that we must pursue for stability and sustainability, right? Peace, progress, prosperity, wealth, and well-being, all through technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I mentioned earlier about enculturation of innovation, and this is really what we should be after, right? As we should be a society that takes pride in producing technology, one that is also proud to be using Malaysian technology and supporting Malaysian brands, right? We've done a lot through Magic, and we will continue to do a lot in TPM and through the new narrative, which is Technology Commercialization Accelerator, which is to support Malaysian products, Malaysian brand, Malaysian technologies again. Because if we do not believe in our own capabilities, then who will? Yeah. So I think over the years, rallying cries such as Buatan Malaysia, Malaysia Boleh, Jago Malaysia, One Malaysia, all this gave us confidence and inspiration, as well as it united us. So now with that, I think I've come to the end of my presentation. I thank you for having me here today. Thank you again.